Well, have you noticed? It's March, the month of St. Patrick himself. So what better excuse do I have for dipping into me collection of classic Irish short stories by Frank O'Connor? Here's a beauty. It's called A Rhinocerous, Some Ladies and a Horse, and it's by James Stephens, 1882 to 1950. Today it's part 1 I'm bringing you. Next week I'll bring you the final part, which of course is part 2. I'm Kim Dodsworth, Queensland storyteller. One day, in my first job, a lady fell in love with me. It was quite unreasonable, of course, for I wasn't wonderful. I was small and thin, and I weighed much the same as a largish duck egg. I didn't fall in love with her, or anything like that. I got under the table and stayed there until she had to go wherever she had to go to. I had seen an advertisement. Smart boy wanted, it said. My legs were the smartest things about me. So I went there on the run. I got the job. At that time, there was nothing on God's earth that I could do except run. I had no brains and I had no memory. When I was told to do anything, I got into such an enthusiasm about it that I couldn't remember anything else about it. I just ran as hard as I could, and then I ran back, proud and panting. And when they asked me for the whatever it was that I had run for, I started right on the instant and ran some more. The place I was working at was, amongst other things, a theatrical agency. I used to be sitting in a corner of the office floor, waiting to be told to run somewhere and back. A lady would come in, a music hall lady, that is, and in about 5 minutes howls of joy would start coming from the inner office. Then, peacefully enough, the lady and my 2 bosses would come out, and the lady always said, "Splits! I can do splits like no one." And one of my bosses would say, "I'm keeping your splits in mind." And the other would add gallantly, "No one who ever saw your splits could ever forget 'em." One of my bosses was thin, and the other one was fat. My fat boss was composed entirely of stomachs. He had 3 baby stomachs under his chin, then he had 3 more descending in even larger englobings nearly to the ground. But just before reaching the ground, the final stomach bifurcated into a pair of boots. He was very light on these and could bounce about in the neatest way. He was the fattest thing I had ever seen, except a rhinoceros that I had met in the zoo the Sunday before I got the job. The rhino was very fat, and it had a smell like 25 pigs. I was standing outside its palisade, wondering what it could possibly feel like to be a rhinoceros, when 2 larger boys passed by. Suddenly they caught hold of me and pushed me through the bars of the palisade. I was very skinny, and in about 2 seconds I was right inside, and the rhinoceros was looking at me. It was very fat, but it wasn't fat like stomachs. It was fat like barrels of cement, and when it moved, it creaked a lot, like a woman I used to know who creaked like an old bedstead. The rhinoceros swaggled over to me with a bunch of cabbage sticking out of its mouth. It wasn't angry or anything like that. It just wanted to see who I was. Rhinos are blindish. They mainly see by smelling, and they smell in snorts. This one started at my left shoe and snorted right up that side of me to my ear. He smelt that very carefully, then he switched over to my right ear and snorted right down that side of me to my right shoe. Then he fell in love with my shoes and began to lick them. I naturally wriggled my feet at that, and the big chap was so astonished that he did the strangest step dance backwards to his pile of cabbages and began to eat them. I squeezed myself out of his cage and walked away. In a couple of minutes I saw the 2 boys. They were very frightened, and they asked me what I had done to the rhinoceros. I answered, a bit grandly perhaps, that I had seized it in both hands, ripped it limb from limb, and tossed its carcass to the crows. But when they began shouting to people that I had just murdered a rhinoceros, I took to my heels, for I didn't want to be arrested and hanged for a murder that I hadn't committed. Still, a man can't be as fat as a rhinoceros, but my boss was as fat as a man can be. One day, a great lady of the halls came in and was received on the knee. She was very great. Her name was Maudie Darling, or thereabouts. My bosses called her nothing but Darling, and she called them the same. When the time came for her to arrive, the whole building got palpitations of the heart. After waiting a while, my thin boss got angry and said, "Who does the woman think she is? If she isn't here in 2 I'll go down to the entry, and when she does come, I'll boot her out. The fat boss said, she's only 2 hours late, but she'll be here before the week's out. Within a few minutes, there came great clamours from the courtyard. Patriotic cheers, such as Parnell himself never got, were thundering. My bosses ran instantly to the inner office. Then the door opened, and the lady appeared. She was very wide and deep and magnificent. She was dressed in camels and zebras and goats. She had 2 peacocks in her hat and a rabbit muff in her hand, and she strode amongst these with prancings. But when she got right into the room and saw herself being looked at by 3 men and a boy, she became adorably shy. One can see that she had never been looked at before. "Oh," said she, with a smile that made 3½ hearts beat like one. "Oh," said she, very modestly, "is Mr. Which of 'em is it really in? Please tell him that little Miss Me would be so glad to see and to be—" Then the inner door opened, and the large lady was surrounded by my fat boss and my thin boss. She crooned to them, "Oh, you dear boys, you'll never know how much I've thought of you and longed to see you." That remark left me stupefied. The first day I got to the office, I heard that it was the fat boss's birthday, and that he was 30 years of age, and the thin boss didn't look a day younger than the fat one. How the lady could mistake these old men for boys seemed to me the strangest fact that had ever come my way. My own bet was that they'd both die of old age in about a month. After a while, they all came out again. The lady was helpless with laughter. She had to be supported by my 2 bosses. "Oh," she cried, "you boys will kill me." And the bosses laughed and laughed, and the fat one said, "Darling, you're a scream." And the thin one said, "Darling, you're a riot." And then she saw me. I saw her seeing me, the very way I had seen the rhinoceros seeing me. I wondered for an instant, would she smell me down one leg and up the other? She swept my 2 bosses right away from her, and she became a kind of queen, very glorious to behold, but sad, startled. She stretched a long, slow arm out and out and out, and then she unfolded a long, slow finger, and pointed it at me. "Who is that?" she whispered in a strange whisper that could be heard 2 miles off. My fat boss was an awful liar. "The cat brought that in," said he. But the thin boss rebuked him. "No," he said, "it was not the cat. Let me introduce you. Darling, this is James. James, this is the darling of the gods." "And of the pit," said she sternly. She looked at me again. Then she sank to her knees and spread out both arms to me. "Come, come to my bosom, angel," said she in a tender kind of way. I knew what she meant, and I knew that she didn't know how to pronounce that word. I took a rapid glance at the area indicated. The lady had a bosom you could graze a cow on. I didn't wait 1 second, but slid in one swift, silent slide under the table. Then she came forward and said a lot of poems to me under the table, imploring me, among a lot of odd things, to come forth and gild the morning with my eyes. But at last she was reduced to whistling at me with 2 fingers in her mouth, the way you whistle for a cub. I learned after she had gone that most of the things she said to me were written by a poet fellow named Spokeshave. They were very complimentary, but I couldn't love a woman who mistook my old bosses for boys, and had a bosom that it would take an Arab chieftain a week to trot across on a camel. The thin boss pulled me from under the table by my leg and said that my way was the proper way to treat a rip. But my fat boss said very gravely, "James, when a lady invites a gentleman to her bosom, a real gentleman hops there as pronto as possible, and I'll have none but real gentlemen in this office. Tell me," he went on, "what made that wad of Turkish delight fall in love with you?" "She didn't love me at all, sir," I answered. "No?" he inquired. "She was making fun of me," I explained. "There's something in that," said he seriously, and went back to his office. I had been expecting to be sacked that day. I was sacked the next day, but that was about a horse. Well, I hope you're enjoying our Irish story in honour of St. Pat himself. It's by James Stephens, 1882 to 1950, and it's entitled A Rhinoceros, Some Ladies, and a Horse. We've already heard about the rhinoceros and the ladies, so next week, part 2, it'll be all about the horse. My, that boy-o James can certainly write, can't he? So tune in this time next week, and I'll be glad to tell you the rest. And I'm himself, Kim Dodsworth, Queensland storyteller. Hello there, I'm Kim Dodsworth, Queensland storyteller. Last week I read you part one of a delightful Irish story by James Stephens, 1882 to 1950, titled simply A Rhinocerous, Some Ladies, and a Horse. It was, of course, in honour of St. Pat himself, whose anniversary is this month, being March, and more particularly March 17, the wearing of the green. Here for your enjoyment and mine is part two, the final part of our story. I had been given 3 letters to post, and told to run or they'd be too late. So I ran to the post office and round it and back, with naturally the 3 letters in my pocket. As I came to our door, a nice, solid, red-faced man rode up on a horse. He thrust the reins into my hand. "Hold my horse a minute," said he. "I can't," I replied. "My boss is waiting for me." "I'll only be a minute," said he angrily, and he walked off. Well, there was I, saddled as it were with a horse. I looked at it, and it looked at me. Then it blew a pint of soapsuds out of its nose and took another look at me. And then the horse fell in love with me as if he had just found his long-lost foal. He started to lean against me and to woo me with small whinnies, and I responded and replied as best I could. "Don't move at all," said I to the horse. "I'll be back in a minute." He understood exactly what I said, and the only move he made was to swing his head and watch me as I darted up the street. I was less than half a minute away anyhow, and never out of his sight. Up the street there was a man, and sometimes a woman, with a barrow, thick piled with cabbages and oranges and apples. As I raced round the barrow, I pinched an apple off it at full speed, and in 10 seconds I was back at the horse. The good nag had watched every move I made, and when I got back his eyes were wide open, his mouth was wide open, and he had his legs all splayed out so that he couldn't possibly slip. I broke the apple in halves and popped one half into his mouth. He ate it in slow crunches, and then he looked diligently at the other half. I gave him the other half, and as he ate it, he gurgled with cidery gurgles of pure joy. He then swung his head round from me and pointed his nose up the street, right at the apple barrow. I raced up the street again, and was back within the half-minute with another apple. The horse had nigh finished the first half of it, when a man who had come up said thoughtfully, "He seems to like apples, bedad." "He loves them," said I. And then, exactly at the speed of lightning, the man became angry, and invented bristles all over himself like a porcupine. "What the hell you mean?" he hissed, and then he bawled, "by stealing my apples." I retreated a bit into the horse. "I didn't steal your apples," I said. "You didn't," he roared, and then he hissed. "I saw you," he hissed. "I didn't steal them," I explained. "I pinched them." "Tell me that one again," said he. "If," said I patiently, "if I took the apples for myself, that'd be stealing." "So it would," he agreed. "But as I took them for the horse, that's pinching." "Bedam, but," said he. "'Tis a real argument," he went on, staring at the sky. "Answer me that one," he demanded of himself. And in a very stupor of intellection, "I give it up," he roared. "You give me back my apples." I placed the half apple that was left into his hand, and he looked at it as if it was a dead frog. "What'll I do with that?" he said earnestly. "Give it to the horse," said I. The horse was now prancing at him and mincing at him and making love at him. He pushed the half apple into the horse's mouth, and the horse mumbled it and watched him, and chewed it and watched him, and gurgled it and watched him. "He does like his bit of apple," said the man. "He likes you too," said I. "I think he loves you." "It looks like it," he agreed, for the horse was yearning at him, and its eyes were soulful. "Let's get him another apple," said I, and without another word we both pounded back to his barrow, and each of us pinched an apple off it. We got one apple into the horse, and we were breaking into the second one when a woman said gently, "Nice, kind, Christian gentleman, feeding dumb animals with my apples," she yelled suddenly. The man with me jumped as if he had been hit by a train. "Mary," said he humbly. "Joseph," said she in a completely unloving voice. But the woman transformed herself into nothing else but woman. "What about my apples?" said she. "How many have we lost?" "3," said Joseph. "4," said I. "I pinched 3 and you pinched 1." "That's true," said he. "That's exact, Mary. I only pinched one of our apples." "You only—" And I, hoping to be useful, broke in. "Joseph," said I, "is the nice lady your boss?" He halted for a dreadful second and made up his mind. "You bet she's my boss," said he, "and she's better than that, for she's the very wife of my bosom." She turned to me. "Child of grace," said she. Now, when I was a child, and did something that a woman didn't like, she always expostulated in the same way. If I tramped on her foot or jabbed her in the stomach, the way women have multitudes of feet and stomachs is always astonishing to a child. The remark such a woman made was always the same. She would grab her toe or her stomach and say, "Child of grace, what the hell you doing?" After a while I worked it out that Child of Grace was one word, and was my name. When any woman in agony yelled "Child of Grace," I ran right up prepared to be punished, and the woman always said tenderly, "What are you yowling about, Child of Grace?" "Child of Grace," said Mary earnestly, "how's my family to live if you steal our apples? You take my livelihood away from me. Very good, but will you feed and clothe and educate my children in," she continued proudly, "the condition to which they are accustomed?" I answered that question cautiously. "How many kids have you, ma'am?" said I. "We'll leave that alone for a while," she went on. "You owe me 2 and 6 for the apples." "Mary," said Joseph in a pained voice. "And you," she snarled at him, "owe me 3 shillings. I'll take it out of you in pints." She turned to me. "What do you do with all the money you get from the office here?" "I give it to my landlady." "Does she stick to the lot of it?" "Oh, no," I answered. "She always gives me back 3 pence." "Well, you come and live with me, and I'll give you back 4 pence." "All right," said I. "By gum," said Joseph enthusiastically, "that'll be fine. We'll go out every night, and we won't steal a thing. We'll just pinch legs of beef and pig's feet and barrels of beer." "Wait now," said Mary. "You stick to your own landlady. I've trouble enough of my own. You needn't pay me the 2 and 6. "Good for you," said Joseph heartily, and then to me, "You just get a wife of your bosom half as kind as the wife of my bosom, and you'll be set up for life." "Mary," he cried joyfully, "let's go and have a pint on the strength of it." "You shut up," said she. "Joseph," I interrupted, "knows how to pronounce that word properly." "What word?" "The one he used when he said you were the wife of his what-you-may-call-it." "I'm not the wife of any man's what-you-may-call-it," said she indignantly. "Oh, I see what you mean. So he pronounced it well, did he?" "Yes, ma'am." She looked at me very sternly. "How does it come that you know all these kinds of words?" "Yes," said Joseph, and he was even sterner than she was. "When I was your age, I didn't know any bad words." "You shut up," said she, and continued. "What made you say that to me?" "A woman came into our office yesterday, and she mispronounced it." "What did she say now?" "Oh, she said it all wrong." "Do you tell me so? We're all friends here. What way did she say it, son?" "Well, ma'am, she called it boozlem." "She said it wrong, all right," said Joseph, "but 'tis a good, round, fat kind of word all the same." "You shut up," said Mary. "Who did she say the word to?" "She said it to me, ma'am." "She must have been a rip," said Joseph. "Was she a rip now?" "I don't know, ma'am. I never met a rip." "You're too young yet," said Joseph, "but you'll meet them later on." "I never met a rip myself until I got married. I mean," he added hastily, "that they were all rips, except the wife of my what-do-you-call-ems, and that's why I married her." "I expect you got a barrel full of rips in your past," said she bleakly. "You must tell me about some of them tonight." And then to me, "Tell us about the woman," said she. So I told them all about her, and how she held out her arms to me and said, "Come to my bosom, angel." "What did you do when she shoved out the old arms at you?" said Joseph. "I got under the table," I answered. "That's not a bad place at all, but," he continued earnestly, "never get under the bed when there's an old girl chasing you, for that's the worst spot you could pick on." "What was the strap's name?" "Maudie Darling," she called herself. "You're a bloomin' lunatic," said Joseph. "She's the loveliest thing in the world, barring," he added hastily, "the wife of my blast the bloody word." "We saw her last night," said Mary, "at Dan Lowry's theatre, and she's just lovely." "She isn't as nice as you, ma'am," I asserted. "Do you tell me that now?" said she. "You're twice as nice as she is, and 20 times nicer." "There you are," said Joseph, "the very words I said to you last night." "You shut up," said Mary scornfully. "You are trying to knock a pint out of me. Listen, son," she went on. "We'll take all that back about your landlady. You'll come and live with me, and I'll give you back 6 pence a week out of your wages." "All right, ma'am," I crowed in a perfectly monstrous joy. "Mary," said Joseph in a reluctant voice. "You shut up," said she. "He can't come to live with us," said Joseph. "He's a bloody Protestant," he added sadly. "Why," she began. He'd keep me in the childer up all night, pinching apples for horses and asses, and reading the Bible, and up to every kind of devilment. Mary made her mind up quickly. "You stick to your own landlady," said she. "Tell her that I said she was to give you sixpence." She whirled about. "There won't be a thing left on that barrow," said she to Joseph. "Damn the scrap," said Joseph violently. "Listen," said Mary to me very earnestly. "Am I nicer than Maudie, darling?" "You are, ma'am," said I. Mary went down on the road on her knees. She stretched out both arms to me and said, "Come to my bosom, angel." I looked at her, and I looked at Joseph, and I looked at the horse. Then I turned from them all and ran into the building and into the office. My fat boss met me. "Here's your 5 bob," said he. "Get the hell out of here," said he. And I ran out. I went to the horse and leaned my head against the thick end of his neck, and the horse leaned as much of himself against me as he could manage. Then the man who owned the horse came up and climbed into his saddle. He fumbled in his pocket. "You are too long," said I. "I've been sacked for minding your horse." "That's too bad," said he. "That's too damn bad." And he tossed me a penny. I caught it and lobbed it back into his lap. And I strode down the street, the most outraged human being then living in the world. Well, I hope you've enjoyed A Rhinocerous, Some Ladies, and a Horse by James Stephens, 1882 to 1950. A bit of Irish whimsy.